The next thing we're going to look at is how we can make a function that we're going to pass information to so that it can do something for us. So let's make a new program, and we're going to call it parametersdemo.py. Let me rename that and spell that maybe more correctly. Parameters. Okay, I think that's correct. And let's, in fact, we're going to, maybe we'll look at our return multiple demo. Or we'll do the sequence unpacking one. And this is working pretty well, but let's see if we can turn this into a function. And to turn this into a function, what we need to do is we need to make a function, and then we need to pass first number, second number, and sum to it. So I'm going to copy this, and so we have this already. And let's see, and so we want a function that does the same thing. So we're going to define display results, and we're going to use this to. This is where we're going to put. This is where we're going to put our parameters. We have our colon and then our block of code, which is indented. And we're going to do something similar to this. So I'll just copy this code, and we're going to do, basically we're just going to do a print. And I'm going to rename these like that, just to show that these don't have to be the same numbers. And then the way we use parameters is we just say we just put their names in. So we're going to pass in three values here, num1, num2, and sum, and then we're just going to display them here. And so this is an example of a function that takes three parameters and then just uses those parameters. It doesn't do anything with them, it just returns them. It doesn't return them, it just prints whatever it got. So it does something with the parameters that are passed in. Now, instead of doing this, what we can do is we can say display results, and we're going to pass three values in. Now, the neat thing about the IntelliSense here is it tells us what we're looking for. But the question is, what are we going to pass in here? Well, I could actually just put some hard-coded things just to try to demonstrate this initially. I'm just putting some numbers in here. If I run this, it's not going to use these numbers for now, but I just wanted to show you that that I can put literal values, and it'll take the literal value of 34, put it into num1, put 12 into num2, and put 23 in the sum, run this print function, and it just uses what's passed in there. So let's run this in debug mode. Actually, I'll put it at the beginning, just like we did last time. And I'm going to use F5 to run in debug. And let's see what we get. So here we are. We're going to step over these two definitions. Now it's jumped into this first function. We'll go ahead and step through this. We're not going to be using this initially. So we'll just put some junk numbers in here. It's going to, num1 and num2 are these two values. It returns them. And now where we're interested, which is here. So what's going to happen in here? Display results. We're passing in these three literal values, 34, 12, and 23. And so I'm going to step into this function, and it's going to go here. Now what went in here? Notice that 34 was put into this first position, 12 was put into the second position, and 23 was put in the third position. So how is it figuring out where to put these things? Well, it's by position. 34 is in the first position of the arguments, And we often call these, when you call the function, these are arguments. 34, 12, and 23 are arguments. And when you define the function, these things are called parameters. So the argument 34 is assigned into the parameter num1. 12 is assigned into num2. 23 is assigned into sum 3. And it's almost like it's saying num1 is equal to 34. Num2 is equal to 12, etc. You know, it's almost like these are assignment statements. So it's just taking whatever the value of these arguments and assigning them into these parameters by position. So num1 is 34, num2 is 12, sum is 23, and then it's just going to do the print. So when it does this print statement, we get the sum of 34 and 12 is 23. So it did this print statement, it comes back on, and then it's done. So that's how it's passing in. Now, of course, we don't want to hard code this. We want to use the numbers that we got and the calculation we did. So this, what we really want to do here is put first number in here, second number, and sum. Notice that these variable names don't match up, or these argument names don't match up with these parameter names. And that's fine, because just like when we passed in literal values, the Python is just going to take the value of first number and assign it into num1. Take the value of second number and pass it in num2. And these two happen to have the same name, but they're actually different variables. This sum variable here is a different place in memory than this sum variable. It's just that within the scope of this function, this parameter just happens to have the same name, but the sum in the main scope is a different variable than the sum in the parameters in this display results function scope. So this can be confusing to people. Is sometimes they think when they first program, oh, this has to be num1. But if I did that, it doesn't know what this is, because in the scope of main here, and when you think of scope, think about the indentation level. So everything at this indentation level can see each other, but the things inside the function that are indented one in a separate block can't see what's out here. So, and this can't see inside of here. So in display results, if I put num1 here, it has no idea what this is. It knows what first number is. And it's just going to take the value, we're going to see it's going to take the value of first number and put it into num1. So let's run this again and with F5 and debug mode and see how this works. So here we are. We're defining our two functions. Of course, when we define the functions, it doesn't do anything yet. It just says, hey, here's a block of code with this name. Then we get in here and we're going to get our first number. So let's step into that function, calls the function. We get num1, and I'll put 55 and hit enter. Then it's going to ask for num2, and I'll put 550 or 5,500. Let's do that. That way it's easy to figure out what the sum's going to be. And now we can see num1 has 55, num2 has 5,500, and it's going to return this. So we'll step over one more, and we can see now num1 and num2 here got these two values, and now we can see that first number has the 55 and second number got the 5,500. So this is another example of this. When we return this, we put it into two different variables, and these, in the main scope, took this num1 and num2. And again, this num1 and num2 in this function have nothing to do with the num1 and num2 in the display results function. Even though they have the same name, the variable names only apply to the block of code they're defined in. So now we calculate sum. Sum gets 55, which is what we'd expect. And now we're passing in first number, which is 55, second number, which is 5,500, and sum, which is 55. and I'm going to step into this function, and let's see what we got. Num1 got 55, num2 got 5500, and sum got 5555. So what it did is it took this value, a first number, and assigned it into this parameter. Took the value of the second number argument and passed it into, and assigned it into num2. Took the value of sum in the main scope and assigned it into the parameter sum. And this is a different variable than this one. They don't really have, in memory, they're actually in two different locations in memory at this point in time. Now, we're going to hit F10 and step over, and it displays the results. So that's how we can pass one or more values to a function. And if you have more than one value, you put separate by commas. If you just have one, you just put, one variable in there. And so now we have the ability to pass values and it does something with it. Right now, this one, we're passing some values and it just prints out. Well, is there another place we could use that? Well, how about right here? And in this case, what we need is a function that we're going to pass two values to, and it needs to return a result. So this is an example of a function that takes no parameters and returns multiple values. This is an example of function that takes 3 parameters and returns and does not return a value. You can see it doesn't have a return. And so we're going to make a function that's really, and I'm going to call it a calculate function. I usually think of them this way, a calc function that takes 2 parameters and returns a value. So we're going to define calculate sum, and it's going to take num1 and num2. It's going to take 2 values, and it's going to say total. I'm going to put total here just to kind of emphasize that variables only exist in one scope, and it's just going to equal num1 plus num2, and then we are going to return total. So this function is going to take these 2 values and return their sum. And then here, we're going to just call that function. And since calculate sum takes 2 variables, we're going to pass in first number and second number. And now this will do the calculation. And what's neat is now, really, I don't need these comments, so I'm going to take them out because I think it's pretty clear what's going on here just from the function names. And this is our main part of our program. So in this main scope, what we're doing is we're getting the numbers from the user. We're putting those in the first number and second number. Then we're passing first number and second number to calculate sum. It's calculating sum, return a total, which we're putting into sum. And then display result is going to take the 2 numbers and the sum and display it. So we can kind of see the main logic here. Get the numbers from the user, calculate the sum, and then display the results. I'll leave that in here just so that we know that those are arguments and these are parameters. So let's run this, and it's going to do the same things we did before, 12 and 31. The sum of 12 and 31 is 43. Works just like we thought. And you know, we could do our header function. I think I had this actually, didn't I? Yeah, I'll just copy this one. And so I can and this is another example of a function that takes no parameters and returns nothing. And here in the main part of the program, we're going to display header, and then at the end, display goodbye message. And now we have a pretty complete program. We display the header, we get the numbers from the user, we calculate the sum, we display the results, and then we say goodbye. Welcome to my addition program. In this program, you'll provide two numbers, and the program will display the results. First number, 35, 53. The sum of 35 and 53 is 88. Thank you for using my program. So, and you have kind of a complete examples of different ways of making functions. So you have functions that don't take any parameters and don't return anything. They just do something, in this case, display some information. You have functions that take no parameters, but return some results. And often that structure is going to be something that gets from the user or from a file or something like that. So these are often get type functions. And then you have a function that I'm going to actually put this in a different order just because it makes it more sense logically. Then we have a function that takes parameters and returns a result. And these are often calculate functions because they take in some values, they do something with them, and then they just return the result of doing whatever it is. In this case, we're just doing a simple addition, but often this is a calculate method because it's like a function in math where you bring in some values and then it returns a result. And then you have functions that take in parameters and don't return anything. These are often used, they take a bunch of parameters and they often are outputting things to the screen or outputting things to a file or, sending things off the web or sending an email or something like that. They're going to do something with the inputs, and they'll do different things based on what the inputs are. And then finally, another example of one that takes no parameters and returns nothing. So this encompasses the majority of the basic ways that we use functions with parameters, sometimes, with and without parameters and with and without a return. And then you even have where you return one thing, and then here you have where you're returning multiple things. Just separate them by the comma. Realize that when you return multiple things, you have to, either treat them like a sequence and use indexing to get the individual things out of them, or you can use sequence unpacking to pull them out and separate them out. And as you remember, in this version, when we got the results, we put it into one variable, but then we had to use indexing to get out the individual elements. So it depends on how you are how you are unpacking them. If you're sequence unpacking them or just putting them into one variable. So that's how we can use the basic fundamentals, or that's the basic fundamentals of using parameters. Thank you.